So I'm not kidding when I say that basically, I think that if we have, for example, like 10-year or 15-year car loans, I think people will legitimately actually get those loans, okay? So if you could actually have a car that's that reliable to say, hey, you know, I think it's actually going to last past 10, 15 years, so the bank's investment is basically just not totally ruined, I think people would actually go out there and buy these crazy expensive cars because they have, for example, lower monthly payments, and they're going to be stuck with this thing for the next 10, 15 years or so. All right, so that's kind of crazy, right? But I used to think, for example, that like a 5-year loan was actually pretty crazy, and now I'm hearing about, for example, 40-year mortgages. Now the FHA is basically saying if you already have a loan with us, we're actually willing to actually go ahead and extend it from 30 years to actually 40 years, and obviously this is actually going to lower your monthly payment. This video, by the way, is very short and very simple, and my overall consensus is basically I just don't recommend it overall. And a lot of times people get into deals when they actually buy a home because, by the way, from the government's point of view, they're basically saying we want to make it easier for somebody to be able to actually get into a home because homes, they are very expensive. And by the way, I agree. Housing prices, they're very expensive. It kind of seems like not anybody out there is going to be able to afford a home, but that's actually not true. It just basically means that if you live in New York or California, you might have to be moving out a little bit further away from the city to be able to actually afford a home. But it also means like things are just not as cheap as it actually used to be. You know, population increases, things get more expensive, inflation and everything else, right? But overall, here's what I mean, all right? So just because something is very expensive, it doesn't mean making the monthly payment lower makes it less expensive for you to actually own it, okay? So overall, here's what I noticed and here's what I actually found out. So let's say, for example, you actually bought a home and this home cost you, let's say, $600,000, right? So $600,000 at a 7% interest rate, all right? So kind of crazy to buy a home that's worth more than $500,000. That's like very expensive, right? But the monthly payment on this thing is about $3,991. That is a lot of money every single month for a home. Now, when you actually take into account, for example, how much interest you're actually going to pay in total, well, your total money you're actually going to pay is going to be around $1.4 million over that 30-year period. That basically means you bought it for $600K and you basically paid 400 plus 400, an extra $800,000 in interest. All right, that's pretty crazy to me. Now, if you actually bought that same home and you put it on a 40-year mortgage, your monthly payment goes from $3,900, well, $4,000 basically, to about like $3,728, right? You might say, Tommy, I'm saving like $100 to $200 per month, right? That's kind of cool. But you end up paying a whopping almost $400,000 more in interest. So a total of basically 1.8 million in those 10 extra years. That's kind of crazy, right? You pay an extra 400 grand in 10 years. So what is my advice, guys? Okay, so I've always said, for example, the government has their own agenda. Banks have their own agenda. And you should also have your own agenda. So when you think about, for example, having a house, don't think about, for example, just getting into a home, all right? Think about, for example, being able to own a home as fast as possible. And what that basically means, the home you're buying, try to basically pay it off as fast as you possibly can. So this way, you no longer have to worry about a monthly payment anymore. You pay taxes, of course, some insurance, some maintenance costs, but that's nothing compared to paying rent for the rest of your life. And that's nothing compared to paying, for example, a mortgage for like 30 years, all right? So my main goal is always, whenever I'm looking at a property, I'm looking at, for example, well, how much money is this going to cost me overall? How fast can I pay it off? And what, like how much of a big percentage is it of my income? So my rule is very simple. I call it, for example, the 33% rule on a 15-year mortgage. The home you buy is no more than a third of your monthly income, including all the expenses associated with this home, all right? So that means, for example, the mortgage, the insurance, the maintenance, the taxes, all those things combined, HOA, private mortgage insurance, PMI, whatever everything is, okay, you want to put that in there, right? So everything associated with the actual payment of this home, obviously not including, for example, electricity, because it's for the home, but that's like separate stuff. It's like just like normal bills. Okay, so no more than a third of your monthly income on a 15-year mortgage. Now, when you do this, you're actually able to pay this property off a lot faster because you're also able to pay extra money towards it. But this also means you're going to be limited to how much house you can actually buy. And remember, okay, the house you want is not the house you need. What we all need as people is usually shelter. All right, so just get yourself into a home you can afford to pay off as fast as possible. I've heard stories of people that basically their first home is a condo that costs like 50 grand or like 60 grand, and they pay it off in like 5 years or like 10 years and they're done with it. They actually own it. Then they basically get another house or whatever, and then they rent that one, and they're actually able to actually get some passive income, right? But the whole thing is, there is no way to justify buying something you can't afford. If you can't afford a Lamborghini and your whole idea is, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put this on a 30-year mortgage. Like, that's so stupid, right? So that's my advice, guys. So by the way, right now, you can't really get, for example, a conventional like mortgage that's a 40-year, but you can have, for example, your FHA be converted into a 40-year mortgage. But it's not like they're actually offering like secured normal mortgages, right? So keep that in mind. If you do get some of those like normal 40-year mortgages, they won't be like normal in the sense that they're actually conventional, but they will have some clauses. For example, there might be balloon payments, so the interest rates might actually be higher also. So keep all those factors in mind. So the main cons, obviously, you're buying something you can't afford. You're paying a bunch more interest in just like those 10 years, like that's like an extra like 400K, it's ridiculous, right? So my advice is buy what you can afford. And if you can't afford anything right now, consider moving. Consider waiting longer, or just keep saving, or just keep renting. Those are legitimate options. You don't always get to do exactly what you want to do, all right? So that's my advice. Thanks for watching. As always, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified, and comment down below, just for curiosity, what is the average home price in your area, all right? So for me personally right now, I'm in Dominican Republic. I'm looking at homes or apartments in the capital, which I'm not going to buy right now, obviously. But there can be anywhere from like 200 grand to like 300 grand, like on the high end. But you also have, for example, like some homes are like 100 grand and like 60 grand, and they're perfectly fine. So in other areas, right, that aren't like so hip. So that's also legitimate options that have a commute. But I'd rather have a commute than pay an extra like 200 grand for something, all right? So keep those things in mind when you're actually buying something. Now, as always, comment down below, let me know that. And up here is another video. Over here is my face. Subscribe, and as always, long-term team officially out.